Welcome back to this very special episode of the Be Unbound podcast, where we're actually recording this with a live audience, which David, I believe, is a first for us.
I believe it is.
I'm your co-host, Jonathan Brush,
And I'm your co-host, David Rethelmeyer.
and we're delighted to have you here. We're looking forward to sharing a bunch of things, and I'll explain a little bit more about why we're doing this podcast and how we're doing it in a moment. But before that, David has some instructions on how we'd like to interact with our live audience during this podcast. So, David, what do we need people to do?
Yeah, well, simply put, like we mentioned, that this is our first time doing a live recording. So if you are listening to this live, we are delighted to have you. And we have the benefit of having the chat right there. And so if you have any questions about anything that we talk about throughout the webinar, you are more than welcome to go ahead and enter that in. If it's a fairly simple question, I might just answer it in the chat. Or if it's something that we think is worth elaborating on, then we'll save it for later, and then towards the end, we'll leave a little bit of time to make sure that we can answer any questions that you guys might have in depth, and we'll have that available. So yeah, we will be monitoring that, and we would be delighted to have any questions that you guys might have.
And in fact, we'll leave some time at the end, but if you've got a relevant question related to something we're talking about, we'll try to just pause and answer it in the middle. So don't feel like you have to wait to the end to post your questions. Go ahead and post them up as fast as you have them, and we'll sort them and triage them. Just a special note, we'll answer all of them. We'll either answer them live here on the podcast, or we'll follow up with you and answer afterwards. But either way, if you post it, we'll follow up with it. So, all right, with that, let's get started. So here's the reason we're doing this. If you're here, you might be here because you heard about this Ascend webinar and you're interested in the Ascend program. Perhaps you attended our webinar a few weeks ago. In that case, welcome. We're delighted to have you, and hopefully we'll add some more depth and color to the Ascend program that'll be helpful for you. It's possible you're here because it's a Be Unbound podcast, and it's possible you don't even know that we have a Be Unbound podcast, but we do. And the Be Unbound podcast is focused on practical Christian living. As we were doing this, David and I went through a couple of iterations working on this. And there's a lot of apologetics podcasts out there. There's a lot about Christian living, related to the news and what that looks like. And there's lots of great people doing those. But we thought there's a little bit of a missing link here with just what does it mean practically every day, just the ordinary stuff that becomes extraordinary if you view it through the lens of faith. And that was very natural for us because in many ways, that's exactly what happens in Unbound across all of our programs, and particularly in the Ascend program. So that was the genesis for the podcast, and we've had a lot of fun interviewing people, talking to ordinary people who do extraordinary things, and having some conversations about the kinds of ideas that build the foundation and bedrock of Unbound. For this podcast, it's a little different. In all of our podcasts, we have one single sponsor for our podcast, and that's Unbound. So we talk about our programs, and we generally talk about at the end of the podcast because, like you perhaps, when we're listening to a podcast, we're not listening for the advertisement, we're listening for the content. But tonight's a little different because, to be perfectly honest, we've got a little burr under our saddle here. We're kind of been on a little bit of a tear recently. If you listen to the podcast, you know that. And we want to take a special time to really talk specifically about Ascend. And we're doing this for this webinar series. So if you're here for that, that's great. But we're also going to do it on the post this on our podcast feed so people can hear as well. And here's the reason for that. If you were here for the previous podcast, I think David's going to push the link out here in a second, so you can do that if you haven't been on that. We talked about the 99% and a really fast summary. We read this article that we'll also post links for that was really influential to us. And it was a person who teaches in a state university saying basically all these really significant problems he's having with students coming in that's making it impossible for them to really utilize their college education. And that's not necessarily new news, and I don't really like sort of pounding on the current generation. But what really got me was that the follow-up article, he said 99% of the teachers and professors replied, said, yes, that's exactly my experience. So his experience where students are basically illiterate, they don't attend class, they never stay in class, they have no attention span, they don't know how to take notes, they have no idea how to engage with ideas, all this kind of depressing stuff. And 99% of the teachers and students, teachers and professors responded and said, yes, that's my experience as well. And what has really got us is two things. The first is we're the 1%. We don't experience any of those problems in the student body that we work with. So David and I obviously work on Unbound, and we work specifically with Ascend. We work with all programs, but we spend a lot of time with Ascend students. And I can tell you that I've lectured to lots of groups of Ascend students. 100% of the people are taking notes. They're all paying attention. None of them leave. It's just a really phenomenal kind of experience. And the second was just the utter frustration with a world where that's the experience of 99% of students, excuse me, 99% of parents. I'm going to try that one more time. We don't get to edit this. Unfortunately, if this is a regular podcast, you wouldn't see this. 99% of teachers, excuse me, are having that experience. That just means to us that there's a lot of wasted talent in young adults who are not getting the skills and training that we think would enable them to live a life where they can thrive. And honestly, that just doesn't feel very acceptable to us. And so tonight, we want to really contrast that a little bit, not because we're picking on colleges, certainly not because we're picking on students, but because we had this extraordinary opportunity to work with this great group of young people. And we want to make sure that you understand what that looks like in case you want to join us. So, David, you want to take that a little further?
Yeah, well, I think before we kind of really dive into just why we think Ascend is just one of the best options that you can have for higher education at this point, I think it's worth noting, not only from the articles that we've mentioned here and that are linked if you're here with us live in the chat, and if you are listening to the recording, it'll be in the description of this episode. But Jonathan, some people might not actually know this about you, that you actually had a pretty substantial amount of experience in a more traditional higher education environment previously in your career before you ended up coming to work in Unbound. And so I think it would be really interesting to kind of, as a little bit of a setup here, as a little bit of background as we get into this, to just explore a little bit of your experience in traditional higher education and how you've seen that change and why we've designed the Ascend the way that we have because of the differences that there are now.
Yeah, thanks, David. So first, just a kind of preface to that, I had a really good experience in traditional higher education, both as a student and working for it. And that's important to note because I don't really have an axe to grind. I mean, I could if I worked at it, but an axe to grind against every aspect of the traditional higher education experience. It's more that some things have fundamentally and foundationally changed. And that's the part that I'm passionate about people understanding. So I graduated from college. I did quite well there and enjoyed my experience, went to work for the college. 2 years after I went to work for the college, got promoted to director of admissions for a private selective liberal arts college, and then spent about 12 years doing that. I really enjoyed the college I worked for, loved my colleagues, loved the team I was with. But I started to get significantly worried about three things. The first was I was worried about debt in higher education, which of course then was kind of a radical idea. Now is everybody's talking about that. But I just didn't think that the cost that people were borrowing, the amount that people were borrowing was going to really pan out with the kind of jobs market that they were entering. Secondly, I was very concerned about the hostility towards Christianity that I saw in higher education. It was creeping into even my college, which had ostensibly been affiliated with the church, and that kind of got completely burned to the ground. And then third, and this is the part that maybe is more on point for what we're talking about tonight, I was increasingly convinced that what college was saying that it was delivering was not what it was actually delivering. And maybe more specifically, what people thought college ought to deliver wasn't what was actually happening. So people had this idea that, you graduated from high school, you went to college would prepare you for a great job. And they would also prepare you for life. So I would joke and say, people think colleges are adult making machines. And what was actually happening was that on the adult making side, it was really a period of extended adolescence, and often extended barbaric adolescence. And so I was seeing students come in who were not getting prepared to be adults. They were actually learning how to be worse people than they were when they got there. And then secondly, and this was the part that was really kind of a fine focus for me, was that people were expecting college to prepare them for a job market. Colleges actually were totally insulated from the job market, had no idea what the job market needed. And as technology rapidly advanced, and so remember, I'm working at the college at sort of the very beginning, 99 to 2000, 2001, the dawn of the kind of internet age and social media and all this and email marketing, all those kinds of things. As that technology rapidly progressed, colleges didn't. In other words, that technology was completely transforming the job market, and tenure professorships just don't change that fast. And so the content being taught in college started to have no semblance of connection to any kind of practical skills on the other side. And so that was a genesis for a lot of what we're doing in Ascend. And so specifically, we want to address three different things in Ascend, some differences that we see between Ascend and not specifically colleges. And we're always quick to point out there are certain traditional college routes that you need to go through. My son was an Ascend student last year, had an absolutely phenomenal experience. Ascend is designed, you can do 1, 2, or 3 years, and he's now going to traditional college for nursing school this year. And so, there are some paths like that. We've had some students that come through and do a year with Ascend with us and then go on to engineering school. And they need to be in traditional schools for those programs.
And I think it's worth noting that we don't want to be here and say that Just higher education is completely valueless. It definitely has some value, especially if you're looking to get learning out of it, if you are approaching it with a good mindset. It's just that in and of itself, and just it's very ineffective at actually accomplishing the goals that it says that you should be accomplishing when you're going through higher education. And often there are just much better alternatives, which again is why we've designed Ascend the way that we have.
So all those things being said, I think what we're passionate about is that if you need a traditional college education, that makes sense. Do that.
Hmm.
If you don't, then the world is much more complicated, right? So like the world's set up this way, our culture's set up so it's like, okay, I graduate from high school and then I go to college. I graduate from college and I don't go to college. Well, what happens? And we'd like to present Ascend as something that can happen. And we want to look at three things that we see students struggling with all the time that Ascend specifically addresses. Now, quick note, if you want to know specifically how Ascend works, you can certainly go to our web pages and we explain it there. But you can also go to the previous webinar that David posted. And in that webinar, I have a series of slides and illustrations that breaks down piece by piece exactly how Ascend works. But let's talk about what Ascend's trying to accomplish. So the first of those is that, David, we see this time and time again. What is it that most students we work with, what's the number one thing that they're kind of stressed out about?
Yeah, it's just simply, I think the best word for it is just directionless, is that they just are in a space where they feel an overwhelming amount of pressure on themselves to be able to know, okay, I'm going into college. I immediately have to pick I have to pick a major. I have to pick the direction of my career at this point. And for an 18-year-old who has been told most likely for their entire life, you can go and do anything. Has been told by the world or sometimes by their parents or friend community, what have you, that they are capable of doing anything. Suddenly, that option, that the fact that they have anything open to them is really overwhelming, and especially when they are most likely going to be spending massive amounts of money and probably going into a significant amount of debt to try to figure out which direction of anything they're going to go in. Naturally, it makes a lot of sense that they're really overwhelmed, and that ends up making them really stressed and ends up ultimately leading to a lot of apathy, is what we end up seeing in the young people in our culture. Is just there's way too many options, so I'm just going to pick none of them and just do what's comfortable and just not actually get out of my comfort zone.
This is like a paralysis by analysis type of situation. And
Exactly.
so this is a part that's a bit of standalone advice that has nothing to do with Ascend. And we just want to kind of really stress this as a value piece of this webinar and this podcast, is that is predicated on this answers-based paradigm that comes with this cultural idea that the way to progress into a career, and I just had this conversation with a young man today, actually just a few hours ago, the way to progress into a career is to know the answer to what it is I want to do with my life. Now, I want you to listen to that really carefully because it's so important. That people think that the way they get into a career is they answer the question, what should I do with my life? What career should I go into? So you will hear this all the time. What are you going to be when you grow up? What are you going to major in college? What do you plan to do? What field are you going into? I'm going to be an engineer. I'm going to be a lawyer. I'm going to be a doctor. I'm going to be a CSI investigator. I'm going to be a home renovator. I'm going to be whatever is popular on TV right now. I'm going to be a YouTube star, whatever it is, right? And it starts with this answer. I'm going to be that thing. And what I want and what we want to really stress to you is that, look, everybody gets paid to do something. We get paid to watch young adults transition from being young adults to full adults. And the one thing I can tell you with great certainty, because this is my day job, this is what I do all the time, this is what I've been doing for over a quarter of a century. That's not the way it works. It almost never, there's a few anomalies, and they're just that, they're anomalies and they get all the press. What really happens is this is a questions-based paradigm. This is a question of, what are my options? What am I adjacent to? What is next in my life? And being able to ask that question, what's next, is different from, I need to seek this answer. What am I going to finally arrive at? And as students ask that question, what's next, and they move into that, and they do the next thing, and they do the next thing, and they do the next thing, they build a series and set of skills that ultimately helps them unfold into transferable skills that they can use in lots of industries. And then generally, most of us will build some repeated experience in a particular industry. In my case, it would be education, for example, right? And so that will be one that you have a lot of inside knowledge for. So I just want to start with that there's an answer. We're not looking for an answer. What should you do? We're looking to teach students how to ask a series of questions. What's next? What's available to you? And how do you leverage that into your next experience and go forward?
Yeah, there's a huge, huge difference in between just what am I going to do for the rest of my life, which is what most young adults feel like they have to figure out when they are entering into college, when they're graduating, versus what is just the next step that I can take. And just that's what we talk about with we are no longer in an answers based paradigm, we're in a questions based paradigm. If you've heard a lot about if you've been around Unbound and if you've heard some of our previous podcasts, we actually just recently did one on the answers based versus questions based paradigm. You can go back and listen to that episode now if you'd like. But the point is that, yeah, there's so much pressure to be able to find the big answer when reality is that it's much more helpful most of the time, and I think this ends up being true not only for young adults, but also just for adults in just about any stage of life, to just look at what is just the next question that I need to answer so that I can take the next step, so that then I can take the next step and the next step and figure it out that way.
So let's do a quick framing up here. So Ascend is a hybrid learning program. And we at Unbound, we train young adults to thrive. And in Ascend, here's the way we do that. It's hybrid because we think we want to build real community, and that takes real connection and live. And so students in Ascend attend 4 live events. And then it's hybrid in the sense that we deliver content online. And there's content between each that links each of those events. So a student will show up at our main event, Apex. This is our national conference. It's in Michigan. Then there'll be a series of content they'll work through online. They'll be put into teams at Apex. They'll actually meet their teammates, but then they'll work online with those teams, doing a series of content pieces between Apex and Basecamp, which is our next event. And then there'll be a new series of content they'll work on between Basecamp and Ridgeline, and then again between Ridgeline and Capstone, and then they'll finish out the year. Now, there's ways to customize that program to add specialty tracks. There's an option to earn up to 90 credits, not in 1 year, but that'd be 30 credits a year, but earn 90 credits so you can transfer into a college, and you can learn all that information on our website. But one of the key things that we do immediately in the program is we want students to answer this, what's next? And we want to give them a series of tools through the content. So they're going to arrive at our main event in Apex, and they're going to meet the people that they're going to be doing this year with, and they're going to have a really good time. They're going to learn a lot of things. And then they're going to enter into a series of courses that we call Navigate. And that course is designed to teach them how to identify, how to think of a framework that helps them to identify the problem that they're facing, and then ask the right questions that will help them navigate through that problem. Now, most young adults, the question they're facing is, what's next? What do I do after that? What job do I take? What career do I pursue? And eventually big questions like, should I buy this house? Should I get married? When should I, all those kinds of things, right? And we don't say, oh, we have the answers to all those. And in fact, we tell people to be pretty nervous about people that say we have answers to those. Instead, we say, let us train you and teach you how to think about these wisely and ask the questions that will help you make a good and wise decision. And the biggest results that we get from this is that I would say, and I teach the Navigate course, and so I get, we have some of it online, and then I do some live Q&As. And one of the biggest pieces of feedback I get from students is they come and they say, the biggest asset I got from Ascend, the best thing that you guys did for me, is that I came in so stressed out about how to figure out my life. And I realized I don't have to figure it out all right now. And I know what I need to figure out next. Like, I feel equipped to make my next decision. And I just want you to know that that difference is profound, because think of what David said earlier. What happens is that people face, young adults face this huge, enormous set of decisions, and they're completely frozen by that. And what results typically is apathy. I don't know what to do, so I'm just going to do nothing. I'm just going to kind of curl up. I'm going to, retreat to playing games online, or retreat to just a dead end thing. I don't know what to do next. And students who go through Ascend have an opposite reaction. They say, oh, I'm not freaked out at all. I'm not stressed out at all. I don't know what my whole life is, but that's okay. I don't need to. I know what the next step ought to be. And I know how to ask the questions that will help me to make a wise decision in that next step. And that turns out to be one of the biggest benefits for students in Ascend that we hear again and again.
Oh, it's so amazing just to see the difference in the students, because that's one of the awesome things about getting to have 4 live events throughout the year, is that we kind of have these physical touch points where we get to see the students physically, and just the difference that is just so evident from Apex that happens in August all the way through to Capstone, which happens in April of the next year, is just night and day. There are so many of our students who, a lot of them just are completely nervous because they have just never, a lot of them have never actually traveled on their own before, and a lot of them are nervous because they're going into an environment where they've never met any of these people, and they are just completely unsure and unfamiliar with what they're going into, and there's so much of a fear mentality that they end up coming into it with, which is understandable to some extent. But then when they come out of it in Capstone, and we just had this a few months ago for our previous year's Ascend class, just the energy of just hope and excitement and for whatever is next that that class had was just contagious. Like, even us who are
Yeah, that's exciting. Yeah.
oh man, we were so excited. And so we came home, all of the staff came home from that event just going like, man, like this next generation that we have that like went through our program is awesome and is going to go and do awesome things. And just take a second to dwell on that, and the fact that there aren't that many environments where you can go to a room full of 100 young people and then come away from it and say, man, I'm excited about the next generation. There are very, very few places in the year of our Lord 2025 where that is a very real possibility, but it is at Ascend events, and it's absolutely delightful to be able to say that.
We see two kinds of transitions happen a lot. We have kids who come in who have high skills, but sometimes low relationship skills. In other words, they're really good at doing things. They have some deep expertise, some deep intelligence, and sometimes they have a little trouble relating to somebody else. And we see those students transform after a couple of events, and just and I think of one young man specifically who just was off the charts in terms of technical ability, but just was a little puzzled about how to relate to people that weren't quite as off the charts as he was. And to watch the progression over some time in the program, to then watch him be able to have the relational skills that matched his skill set. And then he's become an absolutely extraordinarily talented leader and has done some really exciting things. The other thing is we have people who come in with high relational skills but have low confidence in their skill set. So they get along with people really well, but they have no idea what to do. And I just was recently talking to a young man like that, and to be able to watch him gain confidence in knowing that, like, oh, I can do real things. I have real skills. I have real transferable skills that make a difference. And then to add that to the fact that he gets along well with great people and stuff like that, you can just see the confidence grow. And that's the second piece that, so first of all, Ascend is going to help a student figure out what's next, and not in like, we're going to give you the answers. We actually reject that. Instead, that we're going to help you, give you the tools so you can make wise decisions, because, everybody's life is different, right? We don't know the answers for everybody. But we have some principles and some truth that we can point to. The second is that, we have students come in and say, this world is really different. Like, I know I need skills, but I'm not going to get them in college because I rejected that. But I don't know that I'm going to get them at my kind of, little job at the convenience store or Chick-fil-A or something like that. Like, I'm getting some of that, but I don't know how to step up. And so how do I earn the applicable skills? How do I earn the transferable skills? What are the transferable skills that will actually allow me to work in the job market and to be able to be, how do I become as competitive as a college graduate? And so, David, that's what we get a lot.
Yeah, well, and here's the other kicker is that at this point, that question, how do I become as competitive as a college graduate? At this point, there are a lot of very high profile companies who at this point are saying being a college graduate doesn't actually make you that much more competitive from just because of how much technology has completely disrupted just so many different industries, from business and marketing to finance to any sort of technical fields, especially with AI over the last couple of years or so. Most of these companies are recognizing, hey, we actually are kind of shooting ourselves in the foot by hiring these graduates, because even Ivy League schools are usually teaching them out-of-date information when it comes to some of these things that we actually need from students. And so I actually have a friend who works in cybersecurity and is in a hiring position where he's interviewing lots of entry-level positions that are coming in for that field. And he's told me several times, like, whenever I see somebody who comes in with a cybersecurity degree, that's immediately, almost completely disqualifies them, because they are going to have way more confidence in their skills than they actually do because their skills are 4 to 5 years out of date. Whereas the people who are coming in with real world experience and certifications are the kinds of people who actually are going to be able to succeed and the kinds of people who companies actually want.
We see that. We don't hire anybody who has a marketing degree.
That's true.
That anybody with a marketing degree has such outdated ideas about marketing and has wasted so much time, and is so far behind the skill set that they actually need to do digital marketing in this day and age, that we literally, it's a disqualification. We don't have time for those. We're interested in people that have gotten their hands dirty, that have the certifications, that have the skill, that have tried things, that know something about social media and about digital marketing because they've tried and failed some stuff.
Hmm.
And so when we're talking about applicable skills, I want to put some flesh on that, right? And so again, this is the content piece, but there's two specific areas of this. First of all, we want to teach practical skills. Well, what kinds of practical skills? Well, you may somewhat laugh at this, but I will tell you that the skills that translate the best to getting our students, and we'll talk about this at the end, why our students are just absolutely in demand, more demand than we can fill right now, which is why we're doing this webinar, is that, we teach time management, we teach task management, we teach relational skills, and we teach project management. Now, project management, people think that that's like a certain discipline, and it is, but what we mean by project management is we mean actually taking an idea from an idea to reality. So now just think about that. I can tell an employer that if you hire a student who spent even a year with us in Ascend, that student knows how to manage their time, that student knows how to manage their task list, that student has above average, superior, excellent relational skills, and that student knows how to take a project from zero to done. Now that's an incredible claim. You won't find a college that will make that claim. They think their students will. They'll hope their students will. I'm telling you that I'm guaranteeing employers. Sometimes we're having students hired, and I'll say, look, we'll bear the risk for this. I promise you'll be 100% satisfied with this student. And we have in Ascend, we have a job guarantee. And you can go to our site and read the details about this. But if you spend 3 years in our program and earn all our certificates, we guarantee that you'll be employed at a job paying college level salary, whether or not you have a college degree, within 6 months of finishing our program, or we will refund all 3 years of your tuition. Well, how can we say something like that? Because we know if we teach these basic skills, which we start teaching the second students walk into the program, that's going to be wildly relevant to the jobs that they get, no matter what those jobs are. And so that's the first part. The second part is that when I said we have these things that we teach in between each of our events, between Apex and Basecamp, we're going to have students brainstorm what kind of project they want to do. Our first year students have to take an idea from an idea to reality. Our second year students have to take somebody else's idea from an idea to reality. Our third year students have to work on a team that takes an idea from an idea to reality. Between Basecamp and Ridgeline, they're going to get that idea approved. It has to be approved by their peers and their Ascend team leader, which honestly is way harder than getting it approved from people like David and I. And so there's a high level of excellence that's demanded by those people. Between Ridgeline and Capstone, they have to execute their idea. And between Capstone and the end of the year, they have to report on what happened. This for us is the most fun time of the year. Our students do all kinds of absolutely amazing projects. But I want you to understand what happens by the time a student is done with just 1 year of Ascend. They know how to do time management, task management, relational skills, and project skills because they've actually had to use them in a project. And this is where we want you to understand something different about Ascend. I am far less interested in a student's GPA. If they're taking classes, that is important. Not all of our students are taking college classes. Our primary measure of success is, were you able to execute your project? And I don't even care if you were able to successfully execute your project. I want to know, were you able to try your project and either succeed, most of our students do, or if you failed, know why. Because if you can answer those two things, like this is why I succeeded or this is why I failed, then I know that I can turn you into almost any job on the planet. And what's going to happen in that job? Technology has disrupted them. They don't actually know what needs to be done. They're going to say something like, I need that problem fixed. And an employee is going to say, what do you need done? They're like, I don't know. I just need that problem fixed. And most college graduates say, well, I'm really good at doing whatever you tell me to do. I'm really good at preparing for the test. I'm really good at writing the paper that you asked me to write. Or getting ChatGPT to write you the paper I asked you to write. But what I'm not good at is just like, freaking out. Like, you just asked me to do this blank space. And what Ascend graduates do all the time is they're like, oh yeah, this makes sense to me. You need this fixed. Okay, I'm going to fix it. And they go and fix it. And we could regale you for another 3 hours with stories of students who do that in our own team, and then in companies that we send them to.
Yeah, it's so cool. One of the things that we do is that at the end of every Ascend year, we have all the students give a presentation about their project. And as a staff team, that's one of our favorite times of the year, is getting to hear the presentations from each of the students about exactly what they did. And yeah, just the kinds of things that our students will take on, just the ambition that they have. And like Jonathan mentioned, sometimes it doesn't actually work out the way that they thought. And honestly, I think that a lot of the time, those are some of the stories that end up being the most interesting to listen to. And I end up being the most impressed with some of those students who are able to say, yeah, this thing went wrong, or I realized I wasn't able to do this thing. So here is how I overcame that. And again, let's just make sure that we have this in context, and we're contrasting this to the vast majority of young people today who are completely paralyzed by the mere concept, by just the idea of failure, of just the possibility that something that they're going to attempt is going to not work out the way they want it to. But we have dozens and dozens of Ascend students who are coming out and saying, like, yeah, this part didn't go as planned, but here is how I adapt it, and here's how I'm looking forward to carrying this out into my future. And maybe this project is something that I'm not actually going to invest in as a career long term, but I'm really, really glad that I invested the time that I did into it. And I think that just shows a absolutely shocking amount of just resilience and just willingness to put themselves out there and to be able to experiment and do the hard work and to take risks that is just very, very lacking in the majority of young people that you'll find today.
So two things as we leave the subject. The first is just a quick, landscape type thing as well. Think about the world that students are moving into. This is a world that technology disrupts constantly. AI is going to make that times 10 or times a million. And so most people that are doing jobs in almost any field are like, technology disrupted this. I know we have to do something, but I'm not sure what. We just talked about that, right? Think about what happens if you go through a traditional educational system. Let's say you went to traditional college. You spent 4 years where the only option was success. In other words, it's fatal if you fail a class because that murders your GPA. It might hurt your chances to get into graduate school. You don't even want to get a B. You want to get as high a thing as possible. In other words, you're working like crazy to minimize failure. You don't want to fail a test. You don't want to fail an assignment. You don't want to fail a class, all those things. Now, that makes sense to me. I don't like failing classes, and I'm not suggesting that failing classes is a good thing. What I am suggesting is that has nothing to do with the real world. Nothing about that is reflective of what's going to happen when you get in the real world. When you get in the real world, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, you go to a company and the company would say, don't mess up, do this project, show you're excellent, keep moving up, keep moving up, keep moving up, model after the person in front of you, figure it out, climb the ladder. That's not the way the world works right now. The way the world works now is the person hires you, say, I'm hiring you to fix this because I have no idea what just happened. I know that this needs to be done, but I don't know how it all works. And so how are you going to figure that out? Well, you're going to have to try, succeed. Okay, great. We'll do that. Succeed, fail, succeed. Okay, that's the process. Well, that's not what you're learning in traditional system. It's not because there's anything wrong with traditional systems. It's because that's not the way the system works. And what we're saying is that here, when you have to do a project and we have to operate the kind of environment that we have in Ascend, our students get familiar with failure pretty frequently because they're doing projects that we don't know how to do. We're not going to teach them how to do the project. They're going to have to try some things and fail. So our most popular sweatshirt has on the side, failure is an option, on the back, on the other side of fear. And that is a motto that you'll hear our students talk about. Ridgeline is our event in January. At Ridgeline, we ask all of our students to do a project in 3 days. They have a part of a day to set up. They have 3 full days to work on the project, and half a day as we leave the place. And so, quick story here. We had a group of students last year whose project was to arrive in Florida, buy a car that wasn't working, fix it, and give it to somebody needy in the area. So this required them to work together as a team. They had to call a bunch of churches in the area and find somebody that could connect them to somebody who actually needed the car and could handle all the paperwork and all that kind of stuff. Then they worked like crazy. They went through hundreds of Facebook Marketplace ads. They raised the money themselves to buy the car. Their budget was like $1,500. You talk to some really interesting people in Florida when you're trying to buy a car for $1,500. They had one in Alabama that thought would work. They went up to look at that car, and as one of the students told me, he said, the Facebook pictures was taken before they rolled the car down a hill and parked it in the ocean for 3 days, meaning that the pictures looked great, but the car was terrible. And so they came back. There's a picture that we use a lot. There's a group of guys sitting around at a picnic table outside, all making calls to Facebook Marketplace people. They found another truck. It was perfect, exactly what they needed. They went to get it, and the guy had sort of casually forgot to mention that he didn't actually have the title. His ex-wife had the title, and he could go. And we were like, yeah, we're not dealing with the ex-wife situation here. And so now we're a day and a half in, and these guys' project is to buy and fix a car, and they don't have a car. And so, they go into complete scramble mode, as well as half the team is now working. If we don't get a car, what we do instead to make this time worth it? They find a car, a Silverado Chevy truck that doesn't run. They get a U-Haul car carrier. We drag it back with my van to the place they are. This group of guys just descends on this place. And within several hours, the key turns, that thing turns over and starts. And then there's a whole bunch of stuff, brakes tires are pulled off, brakes are replaced and all those kinds of things. And we have a really sweet memory of delivering that car to a needy person from a local church who needed it to get to work and didn't have transportation. The guys were able to hand her the keys and say, hey, this is your car. And a local mechanic at the church checked it all over and made sure that all the registration was up to date and all those kinds of things. But think about the process that happened there. Those guys were in total failure for half their allotted time. They had to then adjust to that, reset, adapt, and finish. Think about the confidence of that group of people when they came out the other side, and think about what they offer to an employer that's totally different from traditional education today. So, all right, if you're keeping score at home, 3 things that we're delivering in Ascend. We help your students figure out what's next. We give them applicable skills, and we teach them how to gain the skills that they need to actually be successful in the market, the things employees are actually looking for. And the third, and for us, this is the thing that we think is most important. And honestly, it's the thing that is kind of the most hidden in Ascend. It is a hybrid learning situation. We want your student to stay embedded in the local community, going to the local churches, connected to people that they've spent years with, connected to their families, all those things. But we also want to connect them into a real community. And to do that, we have to be live. So there's 4 live events. We're connecting those students. And then the entire program is designed to pull those students together into teams, into relationships so they connect with one another. And the third thing that we deliver at Ascend is we deliver absolutely amazing community.
Yeah, and that's something that pretty much every other higher education institution will talk about and will tout, is that just we have such phenomenal community. You'll be able to find lifelong friends and things like that here. But the reality is that if you actually look at the statistics for depression and loneliness and just even more grim, the rates of suicide among college attendees, it's getting worse and worse. And especially for Christian students, usually they will either end up with a group of peers that is extremely unhealthy, is not actually helping to build their maturity, is often influencing them to get into immature things and things that are unhelpful for them, and is just ultimately going to lead them to have a worse takeaway from college rather than better. And so they'll either have an unhealthy community, or they will end up just having no community whatsoever, because they realize, wait, everybody around me is just as lost and as confused as I am. And that ends up, again, leading to just depression and loneliness and just not in a great spot. And so it's just a really unfortunate reality that is prevalent in the vast majority of higher education institutions. And the fact that that is not at all the case and is very much the opposite for, I think that we're pretty confident in saying pretty much all of our Ascend students is really, we cannot overstate how important this piece is.
So we had a question, which I think is fantastic. We said, what about if I have a student who doesn't have a community due to being in the military and moving frequently? Now, okay, I'm going to caveat this by saying 2 things. First of all, I personally do not have military experience. And so I'm answering from an outside perspective, and you should listen a little skeptically since I'm not answering from that native position. We do have a couple of staff members whose families were military families. And so this comes from both their feedback. And interestingly enough, I have just been spending some time with some military homeschool associations, and we've been having this back and forth conversation. So first thing I would tell you is that we find that students from military backgrounds relate a bit, because Unbound has a little bit of, I want to make sure I say this correctly, a little bit of elitism, not like we're better than everybody else, but because we're different. In other words, the people that come to Unbound, and this is a big part of why the Ascend community is different, you had to think differently about what you're going to do with your future. I didn't go to college. And then we'll admit it, choosing to do Ascend is a bit of a weird decision, right? You're going like, this is different from what I have to sort of understand this differently, I have to think differently to be a little self-motivated. Well, that's hard for our end. Frankly, it makes it a difficult program to market. But what it means for our students is that when they get there, they've got a bunch of people that are much more have in common in terms of like they chose to do something different. And so you have this immediate kind of binding effect. And then for military families and for families that move a lot, and we have some corporate families that have the same situation, what they find is they're kind of used to floating around to different places, but now they have a steadiness. Like no matter how many times you move, you're coming to Apex and you're coming to base camp and you're coming to Ridgeline, you're coming to Capstone. And not only that, because you're connected in between, because it's a hybrid program, you have ongoing relationships with those people. And so this is the way we often describe it. People say, how many events do you have? We say, well, we have 4 official events. So what do you mean by 4 official events? And one of our admissions counselors describes it this way. Trent says, you come to Apex and the students know get to meet each other. They go to base camp and they learn to know each other. They go to Ridgeline and they figure out how to work together. And then they're at Capstone and they're reflecting about all that they just did and talking about what they will do. And that part's important because our experience is by Capstone, the vast majority of our students are buying other tickets or planning other road trips to visit their friends that they met in the program. And so what it happens, and to your question here, is that wherever your local community is, or if you don't have a local community, what you find is you have at your back this almost army of people who understand you at a deep level, who share your faith and are serious about the things that you believe in, that are committed to the kind of excellence of being extraordinary at ordinary, and who are really well trained in relationships and working together. And that does create this kind of unique community. And it does mean that folks, they sometimes have trouble with finding connections in the local community for whatever reason, often find a real connection to this group that then transcends the events as they spend time with each other. In fact, again, we could just tell all kinds of stories here, but I'll share 2 and then maybe see if David has some to share. 2 that really stand out to me, and it gives you some idea of the sense of community, is that we had an international student at one point that attended one of our events, and his laptop was stolen in the airport. And for him, the laptop was obviously essential for him to be able to do the program and was hard to come by. And within 24 hours of his arriving at the event, I had no less than 3 representatives from 3 different student groups who were asking me how they could anonymously raise money to replace this person's laptop. They didn't want to embarrass anybody by making an announcement, but 3 different groups were working. And I had to tell all 3 that they were too late because by the time they had come to me, another student had already given this person a laptop. And he had just made it very casual, like, oh, I was about to get a new one anyhow. And so why don't you just take this one? I won't need it this weekend. Now, there's 2 things I think just remarkable about that. Certainly the service part is heartwarming. The second part is the relational intelligence that nobody stood up and made an embarrassing announcement. Let's raise money for somebody's laptop. That they all were trying to figure out how to sort of quietly, without making a big deal, right or wrong. And that was the part that I thought was really sweet. The second one was at Apex, we have a graduation ceremony at the end, and it often ends with a big party that includes a dance. Now, I don't know what you envision when you think dance, but I want to tell you that there's a high degree of swing dancing, not a high degree of prom type dancing here. And it turns out to be, I'll just admit, when they first approached me to do it, I was pretty skeptical. It's now turned into one of my favorite parts of Unbound. It's an explosion of joy. And it's a kind of dance I think dances were invented to be, where everybody's having a really great time and the dancing's actually skillful and interesting instead of kind of weird, messed up. But a couple of years ago at this event, we had a young lady who had some physical difficulties. And so she had a really hard time moving. She moved in a stiff way, is the best way I can describe this. And she had no problem connecting to the community and stuff like that. And I happened to overhear a conversation. And because I overheard it, I was paying attention to this during the night. And a group of young men quietly talked about it, not with a leader involved, not with any staff involved, and made sense that that entire night there was a string of people that just went over the young lady and invited her to come in and to dance with the groups that they were in. And they set it up so the first young man that went didn't take no for an answer because she was embarrassed and she didn't want to do it. And I watched her go from dreading this, thinking that she was going to be standing on the wall all night, to participating in all of the stuff that happened the entire time. And at the end, she was the most relaxed and just joy radiating her face in a way that I'd never seen before. I use those 2 stories because neither of those stories involve staff and neither involve leadership. It's the kind of quality of students that we have that do those kinds of things. David, you probably have your own favorite stories.
Oh man, I was just sitting here trying to think of through and trying to pick one of the favorite ones. I think one of the ones that I'll go with that is just another lighthearted, really fun one. Actually, does involve my wife. So she and I both went through the program quite a few years ago, but one of the things that she did back when she was renting an apartment was that her apartment complex had a Christmas tree photo contest that they ran on Facebook. And Jonathan's already laughing because this is one of our favorite stories. And so the apartment complex basically just said, "Hey, post a picture of your Christmas tree, post a picture of the decorations, and whoever gets the most likes on their photo, we'll give them just like a little prize, like a little gift card or something like that, a relatively inconsequential prize." And so my wife just goes and she just posts in the Unbound group, and it's just like, "Hey, if you guys happen to have a chance, go and just hit like on this. That would be awesome because this is just a really fun thing." And just the entire community just was immediately like, "Let's do this. We're getting you this win." And so not only was the entire community of students going and liking this photo, but then they were sharing with their friends and saying, "Hey, we have somebody who could really use a win here. You should go and like this photo." To the point where they were getting so many more likes that the organizers of the contest had to go and say, "Wait a minute, where are all these people coming from? Are you cheating somehow? Is this a bunch of bot accounts that you don't actually know?" And so there had to be a little bit of explanation, but she did end up ultimately like winning the contest, and it was just something where it was just a very simple, fun thing where just a student just asked, "Hey, I could use a little bit of support on this," and just the entire community rallied around her and just was just like, "Hey, we're going to make sure that you get this." And I think I've even just seen in some of our Ascend Slack posts recently that quite a few of our students have also like entered photo contests for photography or videos and things like that, and the community has rallied just as hard around those as well. So just it's just a whole group of young adults who are just relentlessly cheering each other on for whatever efforts that they might be having, whether it's an ambitious project like releasing music or trying to get into a new career, or even if it's just as simple as a photo contest. Just the students are all so just sold out, passionately supporting each other, and just want nothing more than to lift each other up and to just be there for one another, and are excited about that. So I just love seeing that on a day in, day out basis.
One last illustration to help you really kind of take this home. Look, if you have a group of people, you have somebody who's awkward for whatever reason. And one of the core things that we teach our students is that everybody's made in the image of God. Now, we don't teach the students. Your church teaches that. That's a Christian belief, right? But that's a part that we really emphasize in Unbound. And one of the things that I've seen that has been the most moving and almost always sort of brings me to tears is that at least once or a couple times a year, I will witness when somebody enters an Unbound group for the first time. It's almost always at Apex. They're trying to figure out how in the world they got in this program that mom and dad signed them up for. They come off the bus, they're a little scared, or maybe they're not scared, but they enter a group of students and they say something awkward. It's a young adult thing, right? It's a teenager thing. It happens,
Mhm.
right? And so sometimes it's really awkward, sometimes sort of awkward. And so what happens? Like in a normal social setting, there's a little jeering, or there's a little ignoring, or there's a little shunning, and like they sort, the awkward people go over here and the other people go over here and stuff like that. And I have watched this every year. I think it's a little miracle every time it happens. You'll see the group of students do this sort of kind of quick blink, like they'll just all sort of process what's happened. And then they'll adjust immediately, and then they'll open up, and then they'll ask a couple questions. Now, here's the part that is really exciting to me. The the so-called awkward student is made in the image of God, and they always have significant gifts because all people do, right? And a day or two later, I will watch that awkward person be the center, pivotal person in their team that helps the team beat a challenge or figure something out or becomes the center of attention in a good way. Because for the first time, instead of having to work through all this social junk, they're able to be authentically themselves and watch their giftings be able to be used by the rest of the group. Now, I'd love to tell you that we somehow magically teach that, and we certainly try to encourage it by emphasizing being made in the image of God and all those kinds of things by teaching relational skills. But I will tell you the culture that happens in Ascend has that happen again and again and again. And I just have to tell you with a bit of heartbreak, I don't see that anywhere else, including in broader church circles. And there's something uniquely special about this group that does that. And I don't know how to convey that other than tell you those stories and to say that for David and I, this is like the golden moments of our lives that we just every time we see it, you just kind of go, I can't believe God lets us be in this position to have this ringside seat to see this. So,
It's so cool.
all right. We're going to enter into a time here to summarizing a few things, but that also means if you have any questions that you want to ask in the chat, please do that. We'll answer as many of them live as we can. But just to do a quick recap, if you want to know all the ins and outs and nuts and bolts of Ascend, go back and see our previous webinar or go to our website, and we'll be happy to explain that to you. But in terms of what Ascend delivers,
yeah, the things that we are really, really excellent at is that we're really excellent at being able to help young adults figure out what they are wanting to do next. That may not necessarily mean that we are able to, that we're going to give them that answer. Like I said, we're not the people who are saying we have the answer. We're going to give it to you if you enroll in this program. We're just here to point you in the right direction, to give your students the framework that they need to be able to find the direction that they ultimately will be able to do on themselves. That's what we're hoping to do, is that we're hoping to just take young adults who already have the potential to go out and to do great things, to be able to find that direction and to be able to enter the real world with confidence, and just giving them just the pointers and the guidance that they need to be able to unlock that.
So we have somebody asking if they have some twins turning 21, and if they would they be able to do this program if they wanted to. One is complete a small trade school degree, and the other is pursuing a college degree. Okay. So the answer to that is yes. The question would be if it's the right match for them. And rather than kind of talk to that specific situation here, I'd like to say those are good questions. Certainly the program could work. Whether it's the best match would be something that we'd want to determine. And that's a really good segue for us to say, when you talk to our admissions counselors, let's just get one thing straight. David and I like working for Ascend, and in order for us to keep working for Ascend, we need students. And so our admissions counselors are in charge of recruiting students, and that's a good thing. But we also will tell you straight up and very clearly, the worst thing that can happen to us and to you is that we enroll your student and it's not a good match for them. And so our admissions counselors are not salespeople in the sense that their first job is to find out, is this a good fit? And so in this situation and anything else, they would say, what is it you're trying to do? And then let's make sure that we can do that. And then let's make sure that we adequately explain to you how we do that. And if all those things work out, now we'll be happy to go through the process of, wanting you to enroll and helping you to figure that out and know these things. And so in this situation or any others, if you're saying, this sounds interesting, call us and tell us what it is you're trying to do. And we will, if we can help you, we'll be delighted to tell you how to enroll. If we can't help you, we will often spend just as much time telling you some other options are out there to make sure that we can help you get to the right place, which is also sometimes equally fun. But there is a real commitment here. Ascend works because the right students are in it. And that starts with us making sure that you understand how that works and putting this together. So let's see. My son is a young senior. He just graduated high school. He plans to do a gap year, but works during that time. Does this program leave space for outside work? Emphatically, tremendously,
Absolutely.
unbelievably, yes. 100% of the students in our program are working.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100% of our students in our program are working. Most of them are 20 hours. Quite a few of them are full-time. Some of my own children worked full-time through the program. This is absolutely designed to do that. In fact, we work really hard to both schedule the events and the things that we do around working people's schedules. And just a quick reminder, Ascend works as a 1, 2, or 3-year program. We deliberately design it so that every year stands alone. If a student does 1 year with us and then goes on to what they're next, and I said earlier, my son has done this going on to nursing school, they are an Ascend alumni, and we're delighted and proud of them. So to do the full program, you can do all 3 years, but that means you can use it as a gap year. You can come in for 1 year, do the program, and then you can move to whatever's next, whether that's work or some other kind of form of education. Or you might say, oh, this is fantastic. And I can get, each year is a little different. Of course, we do different things. And so you can build on it and continue through. And so this works as a gap year. We have lots and lots of students use it in that way. We don't always market it as a gap year because that comes with a lot of different concepts of what's going on. But the point is that the year stands alone, and it absolutely would work with working with outside work. In fact, for all of our students, that's the case. And we'll talk about this in a second. We actually price the program so that for the most part, students working 20 hours a week at entry-level jobs would be able to pay their way through the program and, also pay their expenses and things like that, with the assumption they live at home in most cases. But so, okay. David, do we miss any questions as we I know we're pushing against our time, so we want to summarize and finish some things up here.
Yeah, no, I think that's all the questions so far. And like we said, we want to be sensitive to time, but also if you have any other questions, you can feel free to drop them in the chat, or you can get in touch with us afterwards, and we would be very happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Okay. Last question was: consider rolling enrollment, or does it start in August? It does start in August, and that's because we'd love for students to get in to our Apex, which is our first event. In some extreme cases, if somebody registers after that, we'll include the event at the next year, so they still get the event. But it does work a lot better for students that they're able to attend the first event in August, just because they get to meet everybody. If it's impossible for you to do that, we have some other options, but that tends to be the best scenario. And again, something you can talk to our admissions counselors about. All right. We're going to do something we never do in the podcast. And so if you're podcast listeners, just know this is a full-on pitch coming. Um, here's some things that have changed for us. So we have been building this program, trying to organically grow it kind of in a slow fashion so we can build it as we go along and make sure that we're building it correctly and all those things. In the last 2 years, our results have been tremendous. We have retention and re-enrollment levels that beat Ivy League schools, which I'm not sure if that's really a commendable or not at this point. I'm not really wanting to be connected to Ivy League schools anyway. But we have absolutely mind-blowing retention and mind-blowing re-enrollment. And so that's been really exciting for us. We have so many testimonies and stories of students that's worked. We're extraordinarily confident in what we do. We are also really honest with you. We don't do everything. What we do really well. And we try to tell that to you with as much integrity as possible, what we do and how we do it. Also, it's incredibly infuriating for us to read articles like we referenced at the beginning of this and watch students basically waste their time and money in programs that can't help them because they're not preparing them for the future, when we are working with such an extraordinary group of young people who are preparing for this future. So that's one part of it. The other part is we guarantee jobs, and people think that's crazy. Well, here's what I want you to know. After we filled all of our graduates into jobs this year, I have over 80 vacancies right now of people begging for our students. I field sometimes 4 or 5 calls a day from companies, and many of those companies say, I don't even interview them. If they're coming from you, I'll hire them. In fact, I've had one company recently say, I would like to basically fill all my places with your people, because then I would know I'd have a culture that can do it. And I can train them how to do the job. What I need them to do is all the stuff that I can't train them. Show up on time management, task management, relationship skills, integrity, all these kinds of things. That's the stuff that we feel really good about. So we're in this situation where it's like, I've got really great employers, phenomenal employers offering great jobs. I don't want to tell most of them that I don't have anybody for them for the next 4 years, right? Because I have too little graduates and too many openings, and my jobs are expanding faster than my people. Like I'm not enrolling enough students to fill all the jobs. So with that in mind, I'm doing 2 things. I'm just unapologetically telling you, we're not a match for everyone, but if we're a match for you, everything we said here is coming from this position of passion and caring, that we have a program that works. It builds extraordinary young people. It changes lives. It connects communities in ways that are unbelievable. And it creates a lifetime network of people that will benefit your child for the rest of their life. I don't say that lightly. I just had somebody recently call me, and they wanted people with 10 or 15 years of experience. And I called some alumni who then called some alumni, and is able to turn in an entire list of people who have 10 or 15 years of experience. That is 10 or 15 years after graduated, we are still offering these people phenomenal work opportunities. This is not uncommon. This is a standard situation for us, right? And so I'm making a plea that if you're in this position where you decided not to go to traditional college this year and you're trying out to figure out what to do, I'm telling you that I can give you a superior community. I can help your student figure out what's next. I can give them marketable, transferable skills. And I can do that with an experience that will change their life. And I don't say any of those things lightly. I say them because I promise you that I can back them all up. And if I'm wrong, you can contact me directly. You can quote this. It'll be published, so you'll be able to find it online. And I will make it right with you, even if that includes refunding whatever you paid. I am in the unique position to be able to do that because I'm the chief wringable neck. I'm the CEO and president of Unbound, and I will make that happen, right? So that's one thing. Here's the last thing. Because of that, we've completely restructured our prices. You're the first people to actually know this. In fact, because it's moving so fast, the website's not even going to reflect this for a couple of days. But you can now get into the very basic part of the Ascend program for as little as $8,000. You can get the best parts of the Ascend program for $12,000, and you can get our kind of premier package, which includes free travel package and personal coaching and a bunch of other things for $15,000. Those are prices lower than we've offered before, and I'm just flat out telling you it's because we're doing it in a bid to drive some volume, because I don't want to disappoint these employers. I have so much demand that I need to start pushing some more people through the system, and we ultimately would have done this next year, but we decided we couldn't wait. And so we're rolling it out here for July for people that might still be trying to think what they want to do, and there's an opportunity to enroll. And so first of all, if you go to the website right now, after we're doing this live, You're not going to find that. I'm not lying to you. We literally haven't got that website updated. But if you talk to our admissions counselors, they will have all of that new information, and we'll send you links to the website and this in writing in just either tomorrow morning. Dave will send that email out, or maybe the next day.
Yes.
So I think tomorrow morning you'll get the actual official email with all these things. So we're a little early here, but because of the time of the webinar, we wanted to be able to do that. I am generally a little more cautious in the way we say this. We try to not pretend we have the answers for everybody. We're not pretending we have the answers for you. We can say, if you are interested in this, everything we said, we are utterly confident about, and we'll back that up. You can ask me about this directly. My email address is jonathan@beunbound.us. Anybody can email me and ask me directly. And you can actually email me, or you can hack to anybody at Unbound, and they'll give you the same number. But I'm going to post it in this chat live. This is my cell phone number. Actually, I just posted it in the host and panelist thing. Hold on a second. This is for everyone. This is my cell phone number. It's my personal cell phone number. Because I work with students and they've called me at all hours of the night, I just turn my phone off when I don't want to talk to people. So you can call me at all hours of the night, and I'll only answer you when I want to. But you can text me or call me if you have any questions or any concerns, or you want any specific information. Probably our admissions counselors can answer better than I can. But I want to back up what I said. Everything that we've made as claims here, I'm backing up with the full weight of the company here. We can deliver these things. And if that's interesting to you, then we want you to seriously consider a send. David, any last words?
Yeah, there's so much value here. And yeah, again, if you have any questions and any sort of doubt in your mind about whether or not your student or the student that you know is going to be a good fit for this program, yeah, if there is any doubt, please talk to our admissions counselors, reach out to Jonathan. We would be more than happy to answer any of those questions. And yeah, like you mentioned, we would be happy to point you in a different direction if we think that there is something else that's going to be better. But if not, then we will do everything that we can to make sure that you have a full understanding of why we think that this is the fit that it is, because we think for so many students it has been so transformational. And honestly, like, not only do we want to get as much volume in this year because of the employer opportunities that we have, it's also just because it is really that transformational, and we are just so genuinely confident and excited about how transformational that it is. We just genuinely want as many young people in on it as we can. And again, that's one of the reasons why we're restructuring our pricing, is so that as many young people can benefit from this as we can, because we think the more Christian young people we can get in on this, we think that it really, in a very literal sense, can be world changing.
Well, since this entire presentation was the commercial, we don't have to do our ad space that we normally do at the end of the podcast. Instead, we'll say thank you so much for listening. And for those of you who attended live, and until next time, be unbound.